Hello, welcome once again to Stuff and Things, where I like to talk about stuffs and occasionally even things. I'm your good friend Bradley, and today is a very pleasant-ish Sunday Stuff and Things, and we have many stuffs and things to talk about on this Sunday Stuff and Things, including what I hope will be the epic conclusion to the Eye of Argon by Jim Theis. We're going to talk about some upcoming videos, things I've been working on recently, talk about the views for the last Sunday Stuff and Things that I posted. Some interesting stuff going on there. I have a Tale of Woe. It's been a while since we've done one of those on the channel. Might get a little angsty, might get a little hot-blooded, but it's something that has been occurring recently, and sometimes you guys like having or hearing little anecdotes from my life, so we're going to touch on that. We won't have a Seahawks update this week because they have a bye, so don't worry. Those of you who hate American football, we won't be talking about that. But we will, of course, be getting to your questions in hashtag #AskStuffandThings. We have some interesting ones this week. But let's begin with what could be an epic conclusion to the sci-fi/fantasy masterpiece, The Eye of Argon. By Jim Theis. All right, it seems as though we are getting to the end of this little pamphlet, this little novella. So we're going to get through this. Those of you who have enjoyed Grignr's struggles and adventures for the last, several months, this is for you. Carthena leapt to the head of the writhing figure, plunging a smoldering torch into the agonized face. The howls increased in their horrid intensity, stifled by the sizzling of roasted flesh, then died down until the man was reduced to a blubbering mass of squirming, insensate flesh. Grignr advanced to Carthena's side, wincing slightly from the putrid aroma of charred flesh that rose in a puff of thick white smog throughout the chamber. Carthena reeled slightly, staring dazedly, spelled weirdly, downward at her gruesome handiwork. I had to do it. It was Agaphim. I had to, she exclaimed. Sargon should be more careful of his right-hand men, added Grignr, a smug grin upon his lips. But to hell with Sargon for now. The stench is becoming bothersome to me. With that, Grignr grasped Carthena about the waist, leading her around the bend in the cave and into the open. So Agaphim is dead. A ball of feral red was rising through the mists. He said mists, but I'm assuming he means mists. Maybe he means myths of the eastern horizon, dissipating the slinking shadows of the night. A coral... Oh, he means corral, but he said coral stood before the pair, enclosing two grazing mares. Grignr reached into a weighted-down leather pouch dangling at his side and drew forth the scintillant red emerald he had obtained from the bloated idol. Raising it toward the sun, he said, "We shall do well with bauble, eh?" He suddenly can't make full sentences. Carthena gaped at the gem, gasping in a terrified manner. "The Eye of Argon! Oh, Kala!" At this, the gem gave off a blinding glow, then dribbled through Grignr's fingers in a slimy red ooze. Grignr stepped back, pushing Carthena behind him. The droplets of slime slowly converged into a pulsating, jelly-like mass. A single opening transfixed the blob, forming into a leech-like maw. Then the hideous transgressor of nature flowed towards Grignr, a trail of greenish slime lingering behind it. The single gap puckered repeatedly, emitting a ghastly sucking sound. Grignr spread his legs into a battle stance, steeling his quivering thews for a battle royale with a thing he knew not how to fight. Carthena wound her arms about her protector's neck, mumbling, "Kill it, kill," while her entire body trembled. The thing was almost upon Grignr when he buried his axe into the gristly maw. It passed through the blob and clanged upon the ground. Grignr drew his axe back with a film of yellow-green slime clinging to the blade. The thing was seemingly unaffected. Then it started to sluice up his leg. The hairs upon his nape stewed on end from the slimy feel of the thing's bully bulk. The nautious sucking sound became louder, and Grignr felt the blood being drawn from his body. With each hiss of hideous pucker, the thing increased in size. Grignr shook his foot about madly in an attempt to dislodge the blob, but it clung like a leech, still feeding upon his rapidly draining life fluid. He grasped with his hands, trying to rip it off, but only found his hands entangled in a sickly glue-like substance. The slimy thing continued its puckering, now having grown the size of Grignr's leg from its vampiric feast. Grignr began to reel and stagger under the blob, his chalk-white face and faltering muscles attesting to the gigantic loss of blood. Carthena slipped from Grignr in a death-like faint, a marrow-chilling scream upon her red rubish lips. In final desperation, Grignr grasped the smoldering torch upon the ground and plunged it into the reeking maw of the travesty. Travestry, he says. A shudder passed through the thing. Grignr felt the blackness closing upon his eyes, but held on with the last ebb of his rapidly waning vitality. He could feel its grip lessening as a hideous gurgling sound erupted from the writhing maw. The jelly-like mass began to bubble like a vat of boiling tar as quivers passed up and down its entire form. End of available copy. But that's not all. We have a subheading, The Lost Ending. With a sloshing plop, the thing fell to the ground, evaporating in a thick scarlet cloud until it reattained its original size. It remained thus for a moment as the puckered maw took the shape of a protruding red eyeball, the pupil of which seemed to unravel before it. The tale of creation, how a shapeless mass slithered from the quagmires of the stigmatic pool of time, only to degenerate into a leprosy of avaricious lust. In that fleeting moment, the grim mystery of life was revealed before Grignr's ensnared gaze. The eyeball's glare turned into a sudden plea of mercy, a plea for the whole of humanity. Then the blob began to quiver with violent convulsions. The eyeball shattered into 1,000 tiny fragments and evaporated in a curling wisp of scarlet mist. The very ground below the thing began to vibrate and swallow it up with a belch. The thing was gone forever. All that remained was a dark red blotch upon the face of the earth, blotching things up. Shaking his head, his shaggy mane to clear the jumbled fragments from his mind, Grignr tossed the limp female over his shoulder, mounting one of the disgruntled mares and leading the other. The weary, scarred barbarian trooted slowly off into the horizon to become a tiny pinpoint in a filtered field of swirling blue mists, leaving the nobles, soldiers, and peasants to replace the missing monarch. Long Live the King, by Jim Theis, winner of the J.T. Rykosh Award for Excellence! Exclamation point. All right, so we have a lost ending. We have a cliffhanger ending, where it seems as though Grignr is going to die. A lost ending, where he seems to overcome his slimy foe and take the wench, put her onto his shoulders and ride off into the sunset. But now we have a transcriber's note. No mere transcription can give the true flavor of the original printing of the Eye of Argon. It was mimeographed with stencils cut on an elite manual typewriter. Many letters were so faint as to be barely readable. Others were overstruck, and some that were to be removed never got painted out with the correction fluid. Usually, only one space separated sentences, while paragraphs were separated by a blank line and were indented 10 spaces. Many words were grotesquely hyphenated, and there were illustrations. Oh man, I wish we could have seen the illustrations. I cannot do them justice. I cannot do them justice in mere words, but they were a match for the text. These are the major losses of this version, number 2 of the Eye of Argon. Otherwise, all effort has been made to retain the full and correct text, preserving even misspellings and drop spaces. An excellent proofreader has checked it for errors both omitted and committed. What mismatches remain are mine. So where did the lost ending come from? So was there an original version and then Theis did a second version? I shall endeavor to keep a copy of the original available for viewing so it may be appreciated in all its fullness. But as a labor of love for those whose third-generation copies have now, he said succumbed. I think a little Jim Theis is rubbing off on the narrator here, or on the transcriber, to the bitter vicissitudes of time and entropy, worn away by the maybe he's doing this on purpose, ravages of countless rereadings before enthralled audiences, yet who have found that the heady flavor of its stylistic paragraphs has seeped into their soul and still grips it with a fervid grasp. I dedicate this machine-readable version of the... And that is where it ends. All right, gang. I'd like to look up who this transcriber was, and I'd love to see, photographed images of the original text. But that was a journey, wasn't it? That was quite a journey. I enjoyed that quite a bit. I hope you did as well. A reading of the Eye of Argon the worst sci-fi fantasy novella ever written by Jim Theis. Wow. All right, gang, next. I mentioned we have upcoming videos, and those will be this. I am still, I don't know if I'll say enjoying. I am enjoying. I'm still enjoying Captain Earl's Honor Blend. I don't feel as though I have the proper context yet to do a review, and I recorded something already that is going to be the Wednesday video for this coming week. I basically decided that I wanted to lower the action a little bit on my acoustic guitar, my Martin 0015M. You may have seen the video where I unboxed that guitar. God, was that way back in April now? In some ways, it seems as though all this COVID nonsense has taken like forever, and in some ways it seems like it was just yesterday. But anyway, I did an unboxing video of that, was completely in love with the guitar. I have been completely in love with the guitar, playing it all the time. But when I first got it, the action was like right on the high side of what Martin considers their factory specifications. Not to get into the nitty-gritty of it, but I'm assuming that Martin, I would kind of have to get in the nitty-gritty of it if I explain a little bit, but basically on an acoustic guitar, you don't have individual saddles for the strings. You have a bridge piece and then a saddle that's all one piece. And so the height of the string is affected by the nut at one end of the neck. It's also affected by the relief in the neck, if there's a bow or not, and then by the height of the saddle. And so once you have the neck dialed in with the truss rod and then the nut, the only other way to change the string height is by basically shaving off some of that saddle if the saddle is a little too, or if the strings are a little too high. And I think that Martin probably ships their guitars just right on the higher side, like the highest within their specifications. In case somebody wants to shave it down, they can, and if they do want a little bit higher action, if they put the action lower, then they don't really have any way to raise the strings unless they shim the saddle underneath. So basically it was right at the high side. As I'd had it for a few months, actually now it's been close to 6 months. 6 months. You know, it gets into a new environment, weather changes, the wood flexes and forms a little bit. I didn't have any bellying going on in the guitar at all. It all seems perfectly fine, but the action had just creeped up a tiny bit. So I checked the neck, fiddled with the truss rod a little bit. The nut was still fine, and I decided I was going to actually adjust the string height by shaving a little bit off the saddle. I was a bit nervous about it. Had never really worked on an acoustic guitar like that before, and especially a Martin guitar. But I have a video that we'll be posting Wednesday where I go through the process, and I think it's pretty interesting, and I think you should check it out. Also, we have Bloodborne videos Monday, Wednesday, Friday coming out next week. I have been going insane with the issues with my PS4. Basically, every time I try to turn it on, it freezes. Anytime there is an update that it tries to update the firmware in the console, it freezes, there's an error message, and then I can't start the console. I can't even start it in safe mode, and it's just this huge ordeal. I am still making videos for the Bloodborne series. I think we're close to the end, but just know, it is a labor of love trying to get that stupid PS4 to work every time I try to record videos for you guys. But the Bloodborne series is ongoing, and it's getting very interesting. I mean, it's been very interesting the entire time, but we are pretty much to the end of the main game. At the time where I just finished some episodes today, and we are just getting into the Old Hunters DLC for Bloodborne. We still have a few things to do in the main game, I think, but pretty exciting, pretty cool. Check it out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on Stuff and Things Plays. Next, the last video that I posted on this channel, I guess not the last video I posted, because the last one was the first impressions video of Captain Earl's Honor Blend. Check it out if you haven't yet. It was pretty interesting. But the last Sunday STUFFandTHINGS has gotten like half the views that I normally get on a Sunday STUFFandTHINGS. And it's an interesting thing, and it's something that's always been kind of annoying about YouTube, because you never really know whether the video you post gets the views it got because YouTube's algorithm just decided to put it in front of people, or if they didn't put it in front of anybody for some reason, or if it was just something that was particularly interesting to people and they wanted to click on it and watch it. So it's really hard to get an idea of how you're doing really when you're making these videos. You just kind of put them out there. Some of them get views. They're usually pretty consistent on the channel after 6+ years of doing this. I have a pretty good idea of how many views things are going to get. But then every once in a while you put out a video and you're just kind of nonplussed. You don't know why it seems as though people aren't choosing it, or it just seems strange. So the last Sunday video, you know, it was a Sunday Stuff and Things. We talked about the stuff and things that we would normally talk about. I focused on the fact that we have merch now. But it seems like hardly any of you saw it. So I don't know. I hope that you guys are getting notifications. I hope that YouTube is putting these videos in front of you. I just want to remind you again to subscribe to the channel if you're not already, because it is easier, sort of, to be notified when I put a video out. You have to check that little bell, the little icon below the subscription button, and then you'll get notified when a video comes out. You should be notified anyway when a video comes out. And those videos should show up on your subscription feed. So if you haven't done that, definitely subscribe and check that bell, and hopefully you'll be getting these videos just put in front of you by YouTube, because if you never see them, you'll never watch them. And that's kind of a problem. But I mentioned the whole merch thing. This is this part of this whole push we've got towards the fancy camera, the Canon R6. We're trying to upgrade the video equipment for this channel, for Stuff and Things Plays as well. I'd like to do more vlogs. I'd like to have just a higher production quality and more flexibility with what I do. And it'd be great for stills as well, for thumbnails and all that stuff. I just want to keep making things better. You guys have been with me for 6 years now, and we've been using this camera right there for about 5 of those years, and it's really starting to have quite a few limitations. So, one way that you can support the channel, if you would like to, is to visit the merch link that I have down below. In the US and some other territories, there will actually be direct links under the video showing the merch. If you don't see that, or if it's not available in your country, in the description box there is also a link to merch. So that's one way you can support the channel. Another way is subscribing, like I mentioned, liking videos, sharing videos. That's great. If you would like to use Patreon, there's also a link in the description box below. Pretty much everything you're putting into Patreon, anything with the merch, any kind of support like that is going towards this camera. And then some people have mentioned they would like a different way of supporting. They don't want to use Patreon. I do have a PayPal Me link. I'm considering putting that. I always found that kind of weird, but a couple people have wanted to support the channel through the PayPal Me link, so I'll decide if I'm going to include that or not. But those are the ways that you can support the channel, and of course, just having you watching the channel, having you watching these videos, sharing these videos, subscribing like I mentioned, liking like I mentioned, and of course, sending in comments and questions, especially with the hashtag #AskStuffandThings on Twitter, really helps me out, and it's really great to have that interaction with you. Yes, Captain Earl's Honor Blend. It is pretty tasty. I'm enjoying this quite a bit. So, I promised you a Tale of Woe. And I don't know how detailed I need to get with this. And I don't know how, like, angsty and animated I should get with this. I should probably try to be a little nuanced when I'm telling the story. But basically, you will know that we moved in March. My fiance and I, Diamond, I moved out of my old place, she moved out of her old place, and we moved into a new place that in most ways has been much, much better than my old place. You know that my old place was located in a part of town that was rather inundated with a lot of homelessness and a lot of things going on. There were some issues involving that with noise and just all sorts of things. We moved to a new place. I was able to have an office there. I was able to have, it's just a little roomier, a little bit nicer neighborhood. In pretty much every way, we've been very, very happy with it. But recently, our downstairs neighbors moved out, and we were aware that they were going to be trying to rent that unit out again. And they did, and someone moved in. It's probably been about a week and a half, maybe almost 2 weeks, that this person moved in, and I hadn't met them, hadn't had a chance to say hello or anything. But we are very considerate people. We're very polite people. We're also very aware of trying not to inconvenience other people. So what that means when we're living in an apartment building, especially one like the one we're in now, which I think it was built in the 70s or something, but it has pretty thin walls, thin floors. It's not like my old building that was, I think it was built in 1889, and it was brick and plaster, and you couldn't hear anything from anyone else's unit. It was just an impenetrable bank vault, basically. Very nice in that respect. But we knew moving into the new place that noise could be more of an issue. So we try to be as considerate as possible. We don't play loud music late at night. We don't, run around with shoes. We don't wear shoes in the house at all, because we know that there's nothing more annoying than being on the ground floor and hearing people stomping along above you. And we both also get up really early. I get up about 5:30 in the morning. She gets up around 6:30 usually. And we're always aware of trying to be quiet in the morning, because we know that most people don't get up that early. So we would do things, tiptoeing around, just trying to be careful, trying to be quiet, not slamming doors, all that stuff. Well, this new person moves in, and like I said, didn't see him, didn't hear anything from him, would hear him moving around down below, but no issues as far as I knew. But probably about 2 days after this person moved in, Diamond and I were doing yoga in the living room. I'm trying to do that for my back. And a knock comes on the door. And I'm typically someone who just says, don't answer the door. If someone's knocking on the door and we're not expecting them, don't answer it. But she went and answered it. I was sort of off to the side, and I was in a state of just not in the state to receive visitors, because I'd just been doing yoga and was wearing something ridiculous. So I was sort of shifting to the side. And I hear this conversation where the person is basically saying hello, but then immediately says, so you guys have a really different schedule than me, don't you? And immediately starts launching into the fact that we make a lot of noise early in the morning, and it's waking him up and making it so he can't get back to sleep. And just the way it was presented and the way this person was talking, you get a certain vibe from people right away. I was immediately like, this seems like this could be trouble. But Diamond was very polite and very nice. It was like, oh, I'm sorry, we try to be quiet, we'll try to be more quiet, all that. And it seemed to go okay, and the person left. And I was annoyed a bit by the way this was presented. It's kind of hard to put into words, but figured after a little bit of reflection, it's stressful to move. When you first get into a new place, there are a lot of new noises and things. You'll be hearing like baseboard heaters and water pipes and stuff, and you have to sort of get used to that new environment. And maybe just the stress of moving and everything is why this person approached us in this way. Like the very first meeting was like, hey, you're loud, stop it, kind of thing. So I'm like, okay, benefit of the doubt. The next day, though, I get a call from the owner of the building who says, hey, this new person who moved in says that you guys are really loud in the morning and you wake them up. So I basically discovered that before ever even speaking to us, on the first or second day, this person decided to call the owners and complain about us making noise. So again, it's like, okay, I assured the owner that we try to be very quiet and we're not loud people. And I thought, all right, maybe I should go talk to this person and see what we can do. So that day after work, I knocked on this person's door and had what I thought was a very constructive conversation. I was very polite, very personable, and said, you know what, we want to make sure that we're not doing anything. I know the walls are thin, the floor is thin, we are walking around above you, and so number one, we always try to be quiet. We don't wear shoes in the house. I try to keep my alarm level like as low as possible, so it just barely wakes me up. We're trying to be very quiet. We will continue trying to be very quiet. And he said some interesting things. He kept saying that it sounded like weights being dropped onto the ground above him, and that's what was waking him up. And I was like, I don't know what that could be, because I'm not dropping anything onto the ground. Neither of us are. But we'll sort of look into that. We'll try to see if we can figure anything out. And I said, so we're doing our best. We'll keep trying. If you hear anything, if something wakes you up, let us know what time it is and what kind of sound it was, and maybe we can pinpoint what's going on. And so that's where we left it. And I tried to like talk a little bit about, oh, what are your interests? You know, just tried to be personable and everything. And so for about a week, we didn't hear anything. And then a couple days ago, you know, we're still trying to be quiet, doing all that stuff. I left for work and I get a text from Diamond at like 7:20. And it says, our neighbor was just banging on his ceiling, our floor. And basically what had happened is she's a very small, petite person, but she walked from the bathroom into our bedroom and was looking in her closet, and then him from underneath started pounding on the ceiling as though he was very annoyed by the noise. I was immediately irritated by this because I had thought that we had had a very good conversation about how we were going to deal with this. We would communicate with each other, and the fact that her walking in her bare feet from the bathroom to the bedroom was enough to cause him to be so incensed that he would pound on the ceiling. I was like, okay, I will talk to him after work again. So I get home from work. I'm dirty, you know, I try to clean up a little bit. Before I even have a chance to like wash my hands, I hear somebody coming up the steps. Diamond wasn't home at the time. Knock on the door, open it up, he's there, and this very passive-aggressive way of behaving. Like, I know that he pounded on the ceiling. He knows that he pounded on the ceiling. But the first thing he says is, hey, so, you know, we talked about me trying to keep track of noises and stuff like that, and we'd see about what time. And I was like, yeah, so you were pounding on the ceiling this morning? It's like, yes, I did. It's like, why were you doing that? Because you were being noisy and I wanted you to stop being noisy. Didn't we have this conversation about how we were going to talk about these things? He's like, yeah, we did, but it was really noisy, and you know, I'm trying to sleep. And so that's when I was kind of thinking, I don't know if reason and logic and politeness is going to work as well as I had hoped it would. And so I kind of laid things out. I said, you know what, for a week, we have been walking around on tiptoe. We've been walking on eggshells, trying to be as quiet and polite as we can possibly be. We've been racking our brains trying to think of ways to minimize any sort of noise, and we are not making a lot of noise. I said, have you ever lived in an apartment before? Yeah, many times. Have you ever lived on the ground floor of an apartment before? Yeah, I have. Okay, well, you can understand that sometimes you hear things from people in other units. We hear you moving around. We hear you watching TV. We hear you coughing up a lung all the time. We hear things, you know? We try to be as quiet as we can, but we have to live our lives. We both have to get up early. I have work, she has work and school. She works full-time and goes to school full-time. I have so many things that I have to do. We get up early. We're trying to be quiet. I'm sorry it's not quiet enough for you, but don't be banging on the ceiling, please. And that's kind of where I left it. And he seemed kind of miffed by that. In fact, he seemed rather miffed by that, but he left. That day, went about our evening as we normally do, around 10:50, as I like to do. I don't have much time during the day. I'm at work, and then I'm working on stuff for YouTube and things like that. I like to try to unwind and play guitar a little bit. I hadn't played guitar at all. I hadn't plugged in my electric guitar at all since he moved in, because I was thinking about it. I was worried about making noise. But that evening, I got my acoustic guitar, and I started gently strumming it, not using a pick, strumming it very quietly. In fact, I even got a decibel meter, because this is how much I've been thinking about making noise. I got a decibel meter and measured my voice having a very quiet conversation. I measured me watching YouTube videos at a very, very low volume. And then I measured me playing that guitar with my thumb very gently. And the guitar had less of a decibel level than those other activities. So I'm like, okay, this is safe, I can do this. At 10:01, he knocks on the door. And I didn't even notice. I didn't know this was happening. Diamond went and got the door, and he said, you're keeping me up. You need to be quiet. And he walked away. She came and told me this. I got angry, but I tried to push that down a little bit. Oh, I should point out that after I had the conversation with him that day, I called the owner of the building. I was like, we may need to have a discussion here. And he has not called me back. So I've not heard back from the owner of the building. Anyway, I immediately got up. I went downstairs and I knocked on his door. He came out and I did not yell. I did not swear. I did not call him names, but I said, "What are you doing? This is ridiculous. You're playing guitar. It's loud. I'm trying to sleep." It's not loud. It's very quiet. It's quieter than a conversation. And I cannot have you knocking on my door telling me to be quiet when I'm not doing anything that is loud. There's a difference between someone being aggressively loud and obnoxious and not caring about their neighbors. We don't do that. We never have done that. We never will do that. And even though I'm annoyed right now, I'm not the kind of person who is spiteful enough to start trying to irritate you. And he's like, "Is this all because I knocked on the ceiling?" I said, "That's part of it, yes." He's like, "Well, that's not the first time I've done that." So this whole time, I never noticed it. Maybe it happened when Diamond was around or something. But this whole time when we've been trying so hard to be quiet, he's been pounding on our ceiling apparently. So I told him some things. I was like, "I don't know what to tell you. Either you adapt, you buy some earplugs, or you move out or something, because we're not going to have this. We're not going to have you pounding on our ceiling. We're not going to have you bothering us every single night. If it gets to 10:01 and you hear a television or you hear a voice or you hear a footstep above you, you're not going to be knocking on our door every night." And he was not pleased by this pronouncement. I was not pleased with him, but that's where we left it after a very snarky, like, "Have a good night, Bradley," as I walked away. And now that's kind of the world we're in right now. We have a little troll living under the bridge yelling at us whenever we do anything. And Diamond and I just had a conversation. We're like, it was annoying, it was hard to get to sleep that night because you're just thinking about this person with a glass to the ceiling just listening in for the tiniest thing so they can he also threatened to call the police if he ever heard any noise between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. So it's just ridiculous. It's annoying, but we kind of decided, what are we going to do? We have to get on with our lives. We're not going to walk on eggshells for this person. If this person decided to act like a human being with us, then we would respond in kind. We did everything we could to be as just accommodating and solicitous as possible, and there's just no satisfying this person. They're the kind of person, it seems, who, if you know a person like this, they're always telling you how their boss is an asshole, or how this person or that person is just horrible and look what this person has done to them. And you realize it's not those other people, it's the one common denominator in all those stories. They're the reason that all these things are happening, these horrible things are being done to them. And it just kind of sucks to know that we have someone like that living below us. Hopefully things will blow over. I made the decision I'm going to I spent frickin' a couple $100 on a rug pad and an area rug for my office because that's where I spend most of my mornings. And the idea, if he can hear me like whispering in my office, then that's kind of disturbing. I don't like the thought of that. So I'm hoping to maybe deaden some sound in there. I have no idea what this person can hear from their unit, but I find it hard to believe either they have some sort of superpower hearing or they're just insane. But it's very hard for me to believe that like a gentle conversation can be heard in the unit below us. So I don't know. That's my tale of woe. That's my tale of a neighbor from hell. Hopefully things don't escalate. I'm certainly not going to do anything myself to escalate things. I would be perfectly open to this person apologizing for their behavior and then having some sort of normalcy in the relationship. I just find it crazy that someone would move into a new place and immediately try to make enemies out of their neighbors. It just seems weird. Because we have a lot of power in this relationship. If this person is so disturbed by noise, we have the opportunity to make a lot of noise and make their life really bad if we wanted to. We're not going to do that, but we certainly could. It's like someone on a bicycle aggressively flipping off someone in a car. You're not going to win in that confrontation if it decides to, or if things get nasty. So it's very strange for this person to do that. We also know that they're smoking pot constantly in their unit. They're not supposed to be doing that, but they do. So I don't know. It's kind of strange. I just hope that things settle down. And that was my tale of woe. I hope you enjoyed it. All right, gang, we've been going a long time. I'm going to try to zip through these hashtag askstuffandthings questions as quickly as possible. Remember, if you have a question for me and you would like me to answer it on the Sunday Stuff and Things, tweet at SATBradley with the hashtag askstuffandthings, and I will do my best to answer your question. Also, if you are a Patreon supporter, you can write to me on there. First, from Twitter and 1.21 gigawatts, we have... Sup, Brad. Do you know of any reason why you should or shouldn't vacuum seal pipe tea? Same question for coffee beans. Yeah, I mean, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't do it for coffee beans. With me, with coffee beans, if I'm not going to be using them right away, I just put them in the freezer and then take them out when I'm ready for them. With pipe tea, part of the aging process, if you have a tin that has never been opened, just leave it unopened, and that's fine. Part of the aging process involves the little bit of air that is in the tin already, because there's kind of this aerobic fermentation that goes on. Or if you have a blend, there's no point in cracking open a tin and then vacuum sealing it. Just leave it in the tin. If you've opened something and you don't think you're going to get to it again for a while, just get an airtight container like a canning jar or something. That works perfectly fine. If you wanted to vacuum seal it, I guess you could do that as well. It would keep it fresh, but then if you were thinking of aging it, it's better to have it in a tin or in a jar where there is a little bit of air, because you want some of that air in the aging process. That's as far as I know. Next, from Kevin Parent, at Kevin Parent, in your reading voice. Okay. There's an unusually loud pounding at my door. I cautiously head towards it, but then the door bursts open. Wench, I've heard tell of your pipe expertise. What pipe and tea would you recommend to me? The great Grignr. We have a missive from Grignr the Barbarian. Wow, that's a very broad question. What pipe and tea would I recommend to you? It really depends on what you're into. There's so many questions as far as like what you enjoy aesthetically in a pipe, what kinds of shapes you enjoy, and the blends you might like. The best advice I could give you would just be to watch a lot of reviews from people who you trust and see what sounds interesting to you and try it out. But thank you for the question, Kevin, and I appreciated the Grignr cameo there. Next, from Tyler. Thanks, Tyler, at Tyler Brubaker. It's always nice to have you writing in. Hey, Bradley, hope you're doing well. Just out of curiosity, how's the planning for the Japan trip coming along? Winking face. Oh, I think that was an emoji that got translated into text. Hashtag askstuffandthings. We are excited about Japan, but we are also a bit worried because things still don't seem to have been going great as far as tourism and the ability to go to another country. It's in March. We're still hoping that things are going to be a little more normal in March, but we don't know for sure that they will, so we haven't made a lot of concrete plans yet. We're just hoping and waiting for a sign that yes, this trip is definitely happening, and yes, we should start making plans. So we will keep you updated on that. Next, Eric Furman has a couple questions. At Eric Furman, I know you are a vapor kind of guy, but have you ever tried Boswell's Northwoods? Number one, I never have. Or no, I think I have, but I've only had a sample. It's been so long now, it's hard for me to remember, but that's one of those blends that I definitely should review. I guess I need a reminder every once in a while on some of these blends that are kind of these perennials that people always talk about. So I should get to Northwoods, and I will make every effort to do so soon. And then his last question, do you ever smoke cigars? I've answered this before, and in fact, I've smoked cigars on the channel before, on videos before. I don't do it that often, but I really enjoyed the Padron 2000 Naturals. that I've had in the past, and there have been a few other brands, I can't think of any offhand, that I've enjoyed as well. But a gang, that is it for hashtag #AskStuffandThings. But before we end, it is time for the very best part of the show, and that is where we thank you, the Patreon supporters. Every week I like to shout out the people who support the channel at $25 or more on Patreon. There is a link in the description box below if you would like to join their ranks. But for now, I will thank Ryan McFadin, MD of the North, Kirk Crompton, Private Eye, Cody Striegler, Glenn, David Gaudreau, Gus, Jason Buckner, Jen O'Side, and John Leone. And also the Maniacs, the crazy people who support the channel at $100 a month. People like Peter Straub and Bob Magee. Thank you all so much, and thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to watch our video on Wednesday of me attempting to do some luthiery activities on a rather expensive acoustic guitar. Ooh, a little scary. That'll be coming up Wednesday. The Wednesday after that, we will have the full review of Captain Earl's Honor Blend. Also, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we have our Bloodborne series. I'm still plugging away, even though my PS4 is fighting me. If you would like to support the channels, there are many ways to do so. Like I mentioned, Patreon below, subscribing is great, liking videos is great, hitting that notification bell under your subscription is great as well. You can also buy merch on Teespring. There will be a link in the description below for that too. And otherwise, gang, thank you so much for watching. I've been your good friend Bradley. You've been the audience. This has been Stuff and Things on a pleasant Sunday Stuff and Things. I'll see you later.